The Subcommittee on Oversight will come to order. I note that a quorum is present. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. Also, without objection, the meeting record will remain open for 5 legislative days, so members may submit any materials they wish to be included therein. Today we have Congressman Brian Mast joining us, and he has waived on to the subcommittee to participate in today's hearing. He will arrive a little later. As a former Army explosive ordnance disposal technician, Congressman Mast is well positioned to expose any failures of the January 6th device responses that we will analyze today. I appreciate having him here, and we look forward to his discussion. Thank you, Ranking Member Torres, members of the subcommittee, and our witnesses for joining us at today's oversight hearing. January 6, 2021 was an incredibly dark day for our country. Our Capitol was overrun, and some individuals assaulted the U.S. Capitol police officers, and they breached our halls. Additionally, explosive devices were placed at the DNC and the RNC, threatening our security. Today, we will focus on identifying the numerous security failures that proceeded and continue to persist following the discovery of 2 explosive devices near the U.S. Capitol complex on January 6, 2021. Although it has been more than 3 years, we still have many unanswered questions. According to the FBI, there are still no suspects as to who planted the devices found near the RNC and the DNC. I know I share many people's concerns that there has been no update in their investigation. Additionally, the January 6th Select Committee, which was meant to dive into the failures and investigations of January 6th, completely neglected to investigate the devices. Despite former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats spending millions of dollars in their 2 years of the Select Committee, their investigation into the pipe bomb was basically non-existent. Their 845-page final report only referred to the pipe bomb 5 times. These references are situational, and as far as I can tell, no investigation was conducted. In contrast, the term President Trump is mentioned in the report 1,901 times. I refuse to follow in the Select Committee's footsteps and conduct a partisan biased investigation. There were genuine and regrettable security failures on January 6. The response to the devices was one of the most alarming. Here are the facts. At approximately 12:42 p.m., the United States Capitol Police received reports of an explosive device found next to the RNC. At roughly 1:05 p.m., a second device was discovered at the DNC, while Vice President-elect Kamala Harris was inside the building. The Vice President-elect came within feet of the device, which, if detonated, could have caused serious bodily harm. CCTV footage indicates the devices were planted the night before by an individual carrying a backpack and wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt, a mask, gloves, glasses, and a pair of Nike Air Max Speed Turf sneakers. Despite the suspect's appearance on numerous U.S. Capitol Police CCTV cameras and the FBI's efforts interviewing over 800 individuals and assessing more than 300 tips, The suspect still remains at large. Unfortunately, the FBI has failed to provide substantive updates on the investigation despite numerous requests from congressional committees. Today, they have declined to participate in our hearing. We are joined by several experts today who will help shed light on the device's response, including U.S. Capitol Police Assistant Chief Sean Gallagher. On January 6, 2021, Assistant Chief Gallagher directed a counter-surveillance team to the DNC following the discovery of device at the RNC. While today we will spend time analyzing the discrepancies of the device's response, ultimately this hearing is meant to help us all move forward. I look forward to your testimony, Assistant Chief Gallagher, and to working together so we can ensure shortcomings of this nature do not happen again. I salute and applaud the U.S. Capitol Police officers who, day in and day out, devote their lives to protecting the members and the halls of Congress and the thousands of visitors who are here every day. We have a lot to dive into this morning, and I now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Torres, for 5 minutes for the purpose of providing an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too join you in welcoming our witnesses to our hearing. Thank you for your many years of service to our communities. I understand how important and dangerous your jobs truly are, especially when forced to protect us from those who choose to use bombs instead of the ballots to achieve their ends. I also know from many years working as a 911 dispatcher that it is usually premature to assess the law enforcement response to a criminal act while a federal investigation is still active and ongoing. And I am sure that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle know this. Which leads me to wonder, what exactly is it that we're doing here this morning? Maybe it is to peddle crazy right-wing conspiracy theories about the January 6 pipe bombs spreading in the dark corners of the internet. Or maybe we are here so this subcommittee can, once again, try to muddle our history. Villainize law enforcement, and undo the efforts of the bipartisan January 6 Select Committee, all to distract from the simple fact that the former president and Republican nominee for president orchestrated a corrupt scheme to overturn the results of a free and fair election. When that didn't work, he summoned an armed mob, riled them up, and dispatched them to the Capitol, endangering the lives of everyone working here that day, including members of Congress, not to mention putting at risk the lives of the outgoing and the incoming vice presidents. I was in the House gallery when the Capitol was breached. It is imperative that all who committed criminal acts that day be held accountable for their actions, including and especially whoever placed pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC. Yet, we must remember that this isn't an episode of CSI or Law and Order. We don't get to write our own ending according to what may or may not be convenient for our politics. It's frustrating, and I agree 100%, but all critical and sensitive investigations take time. Experts are tasked with not only solving a crime, but also identifying potential characteristics to prevent future threats. From the church bombings that terrorized Black communities throughout the civil rights movement to the bombing in Oklahoma City, federal law enforcement agencies has always had to work tirelessly, sometimes for years and decades, to put together the pieces needed to fully investigate, identify, and prosecute domestic violent terrorists like whomever placed these bombs. FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before the January Committee, the Judiciary Committee last year, that his agents reviewed 40,000 video files and assessed more than 500 tips. Law enforcement has spent thousands of man-hours investigating this crime, and I have faith that they'll continue to do so until the perpetrator is brought to justice. And while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and I disagree on some things, I hope that we can acknowledge and respect the vital work that law enforcement, including federal law enforcement, does on our behalf. Just last week, House Republicans included cuts to DOJ, the FBI, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, programs in their appropriations bills for fiscal year 2024. If they were serious about this investigation and supported law enforcement efforts, then they wouldn't have cut critical funding for federal law enforcement needed to solve these crimes and others. This committee should not be used as a platform to feed into internet conspiracy theorists. Rather, I look forward to discussing and learning more about the responsibilities and complexities of the important work that the FBI and its partners are engaged in from our witnesses. Thank you once again for taking the time to testify at this hearing, and I yield back.
Now recognize the full committee ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes for the purpose of providing an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our witnesses for joining us this morning, and thank you for your long service. And thanks to all the brave men and women of the Capitol Police, the FBI, and other law enforcement for the work they do each and every day to keep the American people safe, which is no easy task, but we're very grateful nonetheless. I must admit I'm perplexed as to why we're here for a public hearing on an active and ongoing federal criminal investigation, especially one in which the FBI has repeatedly told Congress, including members of this subcommittee, that discussing an ongoing investigation would undermine its integrity and make it more difficult to catch the perpetrator. I have to wonder aloud whether that's the goal, to undermine the integrity of an ongoing investigation. I certainly hope not. But here we are. So while I'm not quite sure what the precise goal of this hearing is, I sincerely hope it is treated with the seriousness it deserves and that's not used as a platform to spread conspiracy theories about the FBI and the United States Capitol Police. Throughout this Congress, prominent House Republicans have called to defund agencies like the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. In fact, at least one House Republican sells T-shirts on their website that say, "Defund the FBI." I must point out the irony of my friends on the other side of the aisle repeatedly criticizing the pace of this FBI investigation while at the same time proudly attempting to defund the FBI, ATF, and other agencies leading the inquiry. How does it make any sense to criticize the pace of an investigation or the resources allocated to it while simultaneously taking those resources away? I'm not the only one confused. The executive director of the National Fraternal Order of Police summed it up well. To say you support law enforcement and then withhold funding for law enforcement is at variance with common sense, end quote. And it's not just the funding. This entire Congress, House Republicans, have echoed the former president's bizarre accusations that the FBI has been weaponized against the American people and that it cannot be trusted. In fact, before technical difficulties prevented the majority on this subcommittee from doing so, the current speaker admitted that his allies on the subcommittee were blurring faces of rioters in the January 6th footage they released over Capitol Police objections because, quote, "we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the Department of Justice." Imagine that. People who might have broken the law, we don't want to have them retaliated against or to be charged for crimes they may have committed. As I'm sure our witnesses can attest, law enforcement relies heavily on the cooperation of members of the public to perform effective investigations. All leveling these baseless accusations against the FBI does is discourage witnesses and members of the public who may be helpful and have information from cooperating. Don't get me wrong, it's key that the individual who placed, or individuals who placed the pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC ahead of the January 6th attack be caught and prosecuted. And while I appreciate the majority's interest, I'm not sure how this hearing will help advance that goal or what the committee and House administration could possibly do legislatively to speed up an active FBI investigation. Again, I thank the witnesses for being here, for your service, for your willingness to answer questions. I'm actually looking forward to your testimony. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. This hearing is to review the handling of two serious incidents that affects the safety and security of Republicans and Democrats and visitors to this city. I was sure that this could and really should be a bipartisan hearing, and I hope that it will be. The FBI has been investigating this for 3 years. This hearing is not about the FBI nor its investigation. It's about the response and the process of responding to 3 very dangerous devices that provide an imminent risk to people here at the Capitol. The FBI was invited to be here today, but they declined. But I believe we've assembled an impressive panel of experts that can help us break down the response. This hearing, this is not about the FBI investigation, but this is about something that this committee does have oversight of, which is the U.S. Capitol Police and law enforcement that do respond and how they respond to incidents like this. Without objection, all other members' opening statements will be made part of the hearing, and they are submitted, if they are submitted, to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Pursuant to paragraph B, Committee Rule 6, the witnesses will please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated, and thank you all. I will now introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is U.S. Capitol Police Assistant Chief for Uniformed Operations, Mr. Sean Gallagher. Thank you for your long-term service to the U.S. Capitol Police and the members here. Assistant Chief Gallagher joined the Capitol Police in 2001, and on January 6, 2021, was Deputy Chief for Protective Services Bureau. We're grateful that you are here today, Assistant Chief Gallagher, and we look forward to hearing your perspective regarding the law enforcement response and how we can improve in the future. Our next witness is Mr. Sean Dennis, the co-founder, president, and CEO of the U.S. Bomb Technician Association. Mr. Dennis formerly served as the Bomb Squad Commander and Special Operations Sergeant for the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office in Centennial, Colorado. I hope I got that name pronounced correctly. Mr. Dennis has been involved in the bomb technician and explosives community for a quarter century, over 25 years. Our next witness is Mr. Michael Keim, a former Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority head, K-9 detection trainer. Did I get that right? Close enough, huh? Mr. Keim has spent over 12 years as an explosive and K-9 trainer and handler and has supervised thousands of sweeps for explosive devices. Since the U.S. Secret Service, who supervised the security sweep at the DNC, was not available to testify before the subcommittee today, we are looking forward to hearing Mr. Keim's perspective on the K-9 security sweep of the DNC, what went right, and what possibly may have gone wrong. Our final witness is Mr. Barry Black, a big fan of your first name, by the way. I just want to share. He is a former FBI special agent and master bomb technician. Mr. Black was a first responder to the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, 1996 Atlanta Olympic bombing, and the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks, among others. In 2022, Mr. Black was awarded as an honorary U.S. Air Force commander for his work with security forces and military working dogs. As I said, we have a very impressive panel of experts that I think can help navigate us here today. We appreciate the witnesses being here today and look forward to your testimony. As a reminder, we have read your written statements and it will appear in the full hearing record. Under Committee Rule 9, you are to limit your oral presentation to a brief summary of your written statement unless I extend the time period in consultation with Ranking Member Torres. Please remember to turn on your microphones using the button in front of you so that members can hear. If you don't, I will very politely remind you to turn your microphone on. When you begin to speak, the light on the timer in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, it will turn yellow. And when the red light comes on, your 5 minutes has expired. You don't have to stop mid-sentence, but we would ask that you please wrap up your statements once that red light has illuminated. I now recognize Assistant Chief Gallagher for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Loudermilk, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to testify today about the January 6th pipe bombs. The department greatly appreciates the committee's continued support of the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police who courageously carry out their duties of protecting the members of Congress, staff, visitors, and the entire Capitol complex and legislative process each and every day. Congress's support has been invaluable as we continue to work on building on the lessons learned from January 6th, while also meeting the dramatic workload increases in increasing volatile threat environment. As you know, the United States Capitol Police is a unique federal law enforcement agency. We patrol a campus that is completely open. The public has a constitutional right to visit, protest, and petition their representatives on Capitol grounds. And our officers and civilians work 24/7 to keep you safe, whether you're here on Capitol Hill or when you travel to your home districts. Our mission is vast and our responsibilities have expanded immensely over the years. The threat picture has morphed from securing our buildings to the threat of a 9/11 scenario, to the lone offender, and now to an unprecedented increase in threats to members and their families. On January 6, 2021, however, that safety was threatened in a number of ways, including the placement of 2 pipe bombs, one in an alley behind the Capitol Hill Club on Capitol grounds, which is adjacent to the Republican National Committee, and one at the Democratic National Committee, which is just off Capitol grounds. I'd like to walk through the events of that day with regards to the pipe bombs, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. On January 6, 2021, I was in charge of our Protective Services Bureau as a deputy chief. Our Protective Services Bureau is our Dignitary Protection Division, our IICD, and our Investigation Division. On January 6th, at approximately 12:44, one of our uniformed officers was notified by Republican National Committee security that there appeared to be a pipe bomb located at the rear of the Capitol Hill Club in an alley. A command post was established by 12:49, and the device was located during a search of the area. Around the same time, one of our K-9 technicians identified a pickup truck parked directly across the street from the RNC with a weapon in plain view and the truck appearing to be weighed down. This pickup truck was parked directly across the street from the RNC, and assets from our department's hazardous device section, more commonly known as our bomb squad, responded and began to assess the device at approximately 12:52. The pipe bomb was eventually disrupted by our bomb squad and cleared at approximately 3 p.m. The earlier pickup truck that I mentioned that our K-9 technician located was declared suspicious, and members of our bomb squad then began to assess that vehicle at approximately 3:25. This vehicle was found to contain 11 Molotov cocktails, smokeless powder canisters, OC spray, canisters full of ammunition, a rifle, a shotgun, a handgun, multiple machetes, and a crossbow. The owner of that vehicle was later identified, arrested, and is ultimately serving 47 months in federal prison. The overall scene at the RNC was cleared at approximately 6:30 p.m. As a result of the discovery of the pipe bomb at the RNC, members of our department's counter-surveillance unit, as they have been trained to do, began to push out and search for other locations for either suspicious packages, suspicious people, or similar devices. At approximately 1 p.m., the department requested Metro Transit to have trains bypass the Capitol South Metro due to the presence of the pipe bomb. At 1:07 p.m., approximately 23 minutes after the Capitol Police was alerted of the pipe bomb at the RNC, 2 of our counter-surveillance agents located what appeared to be a similar pipe bomb underneath a bench in front of the DNC. The Cannon House Office Building was evacuated at about 1:11 p.m., and officers immediately began to clear residences and businesses in the area. The scene at the DNC was cleared at approximately 4:36, after our bomb squad disrupted and cleared the pipe bombs. The FBI then took possession of both devices and all evidence and is the lead agency on the entire investigation. It is my understanding that both of these devices were fully functional and viable pipe bombs. However, it is unclear whether they would have gone off on their own had they not been rendered safe by our bomb squad. As I noted earlier, our bomb squad successfully handled an extremely dangerous situation on January 6th. but since that date, we have determined additional improvements are necessary. Thus, the department has continued to seek ways to improve our operations, overhauling many of our policies, processes, and implementing numerous changes related to civil disturbance unit, intelligence gathering, operational planning, training and equipment, incident command, and internal communications, as well as a host of other areas. Since January 6th, our bomb squad technicians have begun receiving specialized advanced training from the ATF's Certified Explosive Specialist Program, and the department has a bomb technician training with an elite FBI team, which is one of only 14 such teams in the country now. Our bomb squad is also participating in the Raven Challenge, which includes numerous public safety squads and military EOD teams performing realistic operational scenarios. Our bomb squad remains one of the largest and one of the most capable squads in the entire country, and the changes noted above will ensure that the department is even better prepared to respond to any similar incidents. Finally, I want to make sure that I note, and this is important, I am extremely proud that none of these 2 pipe bombs, nor any of the Molotov cocktails found that day, exploded or harmed anybody. This is without a doubt directly due to the outstanding efforts of not only our bomb squad, but other members of the U.S. Capitol Police. We now know, based on video surveillance, that both of these devices have been, were placed the night before on January 5th, 2021. While there is vague footage of the suspect, to date, nobody has been arrested for the offense, despite a $500,000 reward by the FBI and many hours of hard work by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. I do hope one day that the person or persons responsible for planting these 2 explosive devices on Capitol grounds will be brought to justice by the FBI. The department thanks the committee for its support, and we greatly appreciate our continued partnership with Congress. I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Loudermilk, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity today to provide some background on the response to improvised explosive devices in the United States. My name is Sean Dennis. I'm a retired Sheriff Sergeant and Bomb Squad Commander from the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office outside of Denver, Colorado. After retirement, I worked for the Transportation Security Administration as an explosive specialist at the Denver International Airport. It was during this time that I, along with a small group of military and public safety bomb technicians with similar backgrounds, recognized the need for an organization to support the bomb technician community. We felt underrepresented despite the critical role we were playing to keep our homeland safe. In 2016, we formed the United States Bomb Technician Association, known as the USBTA. And today we represent over 5,000 active military and public safety bomb technicians by educating those in positions of leadership on the desperate needs of this community. USBTA also conducts technology training exercises to identify technology and training gaps that exist within the bomb technician community. In addition, USBTA conducts research involving counter-ID tools and equipment, along with research of characterizing hazardous homemade explosives. The lessons learned from our training and research are used to give the EOD warfighter and public safety bomb technician the capabilities to render safe IEDs in a safe, efficient, and effective manner. Some of the critical areas in the bomb technician community that we would like to highlight today include: 1, training and certifications. Public safety bomb technicians receive basic training and certification at the FBI Hazardous Devices School in Huntsville, Alabama, consisting of a 6-week curriculum. Bomb technicians then receive a variety of continued education and training from various U.S. government entities, such as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the FBI, and the DHS Office for Bombing Prevention. The National Bomb Squad Commanders Advisory Board provides national guidelines for bomb technicians to conduct 24 hours of monthly training in addition to the required recertification with the FBI every 3 years to ensure competency. Furthermore, bomb squads and their technicians seek out professional organizations and industry events to increase their knowledge and strengthen their skill sets. 2, incident response. Bomb technicians face several challenges when called to an incident in which a suspect package or hazardous material has been identified. First and foremost, they are facing the unknown. Only the person responsible for construction and placement knows how these device functions and who the target is and what the motive is behind their malicious intentions or malicious actions. Bomb squads may only have minutes to determine those factors for the preservation of life. And lastly, Challenges upon arrival. Some of the life-threatening challenges faced by the bomb technicians may include the following: the initial intelligence. First responders' assessment provided to the responding bomb technicians may only provide a portion of the information required. Determination of the environment, permissive or hostile. Identification of single or multiple devices. Potential of secondary devices, on-scene targeting of first responders. Location of device placement by bomb maker. Standoff area densely populated with bystanders and civilians. Inability to evacuate civilians in a timely manner. Having the appropriate equipment available to handle the call. Poor weather conditions. Adequate personnel to perform appropriate render-safe operations. Possibility of remote detonation by the bomb maker. Limited render-safe options based on surrounding critical infrastructure. The inability to remain remote. Remember, if you can see the device can see you. Communications amongst team members and command staff. Although not present during the events that took place on January 6, 2021, I'm aware of some of the challenges the bomb technicians might have faced, as I have experienced similar challenges during my time as the bomb squad commander at the sheriff's office. The job of a bomb technician is inherently dangerous and stressful. When we are called upon, the situation has already risen to a level that most don't have to face in their normal lives. The decisions you make in a very short period of time have consequences that can cost your life and the lives of the innocent around you. There is no opportunity for do-overs or time for tabling the options for further discussions. There is a term in our community that is posted outside our doors of our training classroom to remind us: initial success or total failure. The challenges faced by the Capitol Police Bomb Squad on that January 6th event were extraordinary, as they are required to navigate the render safe of multiple devices in and around critical infrastructures, building, and general population, in addition to thousands actively protesting within their scene. By all accounts, it is, in my opinion, the bomb squad dealt with these challenges professionally and rendered safe the device safe of avoiding harm or injury to themselves or others, and were able to collect forensic evidence to assist in determining who was responsible. I'm proud of the bomb squad community that we represent, and we'll continue to advocate for their needs to ensure they have the appropriate resources, personnel, training, and technology, and when they are faced with these extraordinary challenges, in keeping our community safe. Thank you, and I yield back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Mr. Keim, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Mike Keim. I'm a retired 25-year veteran of the K-9 Unit Metro Transit Police Department, Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority. I began my career in 1992. I spent the last approximately 12 years of my career training explosive detections, K-9 teams, the handlers and the dogs. In this role, I had the responsibility of training the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority Police Department explosive detection dogs from the time they were acquired through their certification and utilization, maintaining training records for both handlers and dogs. During my career, I've conducted or supervised in excess of 35,000 explosive sweeps, real life and training scenarios, utilizing explosive detection dogs throughout Washington, D.C. Metro Rail System and stations. Many of my friends and colleagues from my 25-year career responded on January 6, 2021. I'm here today to answer any questions you may have or provide any information that this committee deems useful. I'd like to thank the chairman, Loudermilk, and as well as all the other committee members for your help in law enforcement. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Keim. We appreciate the time management there. And with that length of testimony, you could become a very popular witness for a lot of committees here. Mr. Black, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Loudermilk, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Last week, I was asked to consider the status of the investigation regarding the subject that left 2 devices before the RNC and DNC back in January of 2021. I retired in 2019, so I wasn't present that day. But as a master bomb technician, a master police instructor, founding member of the FBI's evidence response team, worldwide rapid deployment team, and having been a first responder at numerous high-profile events, I'm familiar with the way bombing investigations are conducted. After I retired, I took a position as an instructor at a leading forensic science institute where I teach classes on crime scene processing and the forensic investigation of mass disasters. And one thing I tell my students, as Ms. Torres alluded to, the CSI effect just doesn't exist. That's a product of television shows that depict trace evidence and forensic science as a silver bullet that's omnipresent and can almost immediately point to a specific subject out of the universe of possible subjects. Oftentimes, forensic evidence is just unavailable, and investigators have to rely on other types of investigative techniques. Many times, that is directly related to the identity of the suspect. By way of example, Eric Rudolph, the Olympic bomber, placed 4 devices over a 2-year period. Despite forensic examinations during that time, his identity remained elusive. It took eyewitnesses to come forward that said they saw a suspicious man in a specific type of truck just prior to the blast in Birmingham that killed a police officer. It was those tips that focused the investigation on Eric Rudolph. Similarly, Ted Kaczynski was active for 17 years. Despite thorough forensic examinations of over a dozen devices during that period, his identity remained elusive, primarily because Mr. Kaczynski went to great lengths to obscure forensic evidence. It wasn't until his manifesto was published that his brother provided a tip. That tip is what brought focus to Mr. Kaczynski, not the years of forensic examinations. I once responded to the bombing of an Air Force recruiting station. As we were processing that crime scene, we recovered pieces of a pipe bomb and a specialized, customized timing device. As we collected that evidence and were preparing it for submission to the laboratory, again, witness came forward that indicated they saw a suspicious man driving a unique red racing motorcycle before and after the blast. Using Air Force personnel records cross-matched with DMV records, we developed a suspect, and within 24 hours, were able to execute a search warrant at that individual's home and recovered 2 fully viable time bombs. Forensics were used to tie those 2 time bombs to the evidence recovered from the scene, but it was the witness testimony that expeditiously pointed to that suspect. As for the January 6th suspect, it appears that there was a conscious effort to disguise that person's identity, making personal identification difficult. From what I've seen in the public record, it appears that the IEDs themselves were comprised of very simple, very common components that are available most anywhere. That makes it difficult to trace the source of those components, and thereby makes it difficult to determine who purchased those components. I understand hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews have been conducted, tens of thousands of video images have been reviewed, hundreds of tips. Sadly, sometimes cases go cold. Once the forensic evidence has been exhausted, once all the viable leads have been covered, new information is required. So requests for public information and a $500,000 reward may one day provide the key that will unlock this case. And at that time, I'm certain the dedicated men and women of the FBI and our law enforcement partners will thoroughly exhaust those leads to their logical conclusion. So thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Well, thank you all. We're going to enter into the question portion now. If some of you, maybe all of our witnesses, may not have participated in a hearing like this at this point, members will be allowed to ask questions. They will alternate between Republican and Democrat, back and forth. Each member will have 5 minutes, and so many have multiple questions, so ask that you be, I'm going to ask you to be thorough but concise in your answers. And so, again, we're looking for facts. We're just looking to review what happened and see how we can go forward. With that, one of the things that, as Mr. Black alluded to, a lot of times are just going off of evidence after the fact. Fortunately, we do have video of the placing of the pipe bombs as well as the response. So today we'll be utilizing some U.S. Capitol Police CCTV footage that we'll play to help us break these things down. Now, as most of you know, there is not any audio associated with these videos. We didn't hire a Hollywood producer to put sound effects in, but what we did do is overlay radio communications, Capitol Police radio communications over the top of the video to save time. So whatever audio that you're hearing is actually where we have put the radio communications commensurate with the video. And according to the FBI, both devices were planted the night before, but were discovered more than 16 hours later in the early afternoon of January 6, 2021. One of the questions the subcommittee is interested in, as part of our oversight responsibilities, is the law enforcement response after the devices were discovered, specifically setting and maintaining a secure perimeter around those devices. At roughly 12:42 p.m., the first device was discovered near the RNC. At approximately 1:21 p.m., two civilians walked south on First Street, past the RNC, and entered the Capitol South Metro Station directly across from the alley where the first device was discovered. U.S. Capitol Police security footage shows no police presence at First and C Street to prevent pedestrian traffic from walking directly into the safe perimeter. Approximately 1 minute later, a U.S. Capitol Police officer makes the following broadcast over the radio. Can we please play that tape?
Traffic 1. Traffic 1. Sir, I have people walking down First Street right in front of the Republican Club. Somebody's not doing their job.
Assistant Chief Gallagher, you can clearly see in the video a roll of yellow police tape on top of a sidewalk post at First and C Street, which indicates that there's already been the response and at least the presence there. Should a safe perimeter have been established at First and C Street by 1:21 p.m.?
Thank you, Chairman. So for incidents of this nature, the first officer on the scene will be setting up incident command and a command post. And part of that procedure is to identify a perimeter and set a perimeter for a safe distance away from a potential hazard. So yes, there should have been a perimeter officer at that location. I'd like to clarify, as these incidents are ongoing, we are at 121, we're dealing with breaches on the east front and the west front of the Capitol as well. So our manpower is very succinct in where these officers were assigned and stuff. And any officers that come to help set up a perimeter are coming from another area. We don't have just response teams, you know, waiting around to help set up perimeters. So there could have been a delay with getting there.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dennis, in your opinion, from watching that video, was there a safe perimeter at the RNC?
From looking at the video, it's hard to tell exactly, the perimeter, not being too familiar with the area, but back what the Assistant Chief just said, is setting up a good perimeter like that for the safe distances for the bomb squad to act. It's hard to tell if it was actually done or not.
Okay. But there's, you know, in your opinion, there should have been something.
Could have been, yes, correct.
Is that a priority from your experience of
Or when the
working
bomb
with
squad is responding to an incident such as this, and it's extremely important for the perimeter to be set up in a timely manner so the bomb squad could act appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Keim, in your opinion, was there a safe perimeter at the RNC at this time?
From the video, it's tough to tell, but that would be the,
Thank you.
from the video, it's tough to tell, but that's, as a canine officer, when we show up, if we see a suspicious package or there's one there, the first thing we're gonna do is establish the command post and set up a perimeter, a safe distance away.
Okay, Mr. Black, same question.
Yes, sir. Again, from the video, it's difficult to tell, not being familiar with the area, but these are phases. So when the suspect device is first noticed, then the first responding officer should set up a safe perimeter, hold that perimeter until EOD assets can arrive on scene.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dennis, why is it important to establish a secure perimeter early on and maintain that perimeter throughout the day? Why is that a priority, to quarantine off that area?
So for when the bomb squad's responding and setting up their own internal command post, if you will, regarding dealing with the incident or the potential IDs or suspect packages, it's extremely important for the safe distance that are established with the perimeter to make sure that everybody is Both civilian as well as even other law enforcement personnel are far enough away in a safe manner so the bomb squad could act appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Now, to complicate things even further, as Assistant Chief Gallagher said, there were multiple instances going on. There were actually another instance going on over at the Democrat National Committee. Similarly, law enforcement at the DNC appeared to fail to secure the perimeter at a much larger scale. The device at the DNC was discovered at 1:05 p.m. After its discovery, law enforcement should have established a secured perimeter at the DNC as well. Over the span of the afternoon, more than 30 different vehicles and numerous civilians breached what should have been a secure perimeter. The following video shows examples of the perimeter being breached at various points in the afternoon, both before and after the disruption of the device. This is once the bomb squad did their job, disrupted the device, we had instances before and after. Let's go ahead and play this tape. And again, this is a montage of
7A Adam, priority.
207, go ahead.
We have vehicles that are driving right past the package and coming up. We need to make sure that officers are posted right now, just above Canal and Washington, in order to ensure nobody walks past this package.
that was where the package was by the park bench there. For example, at 2:01 p.m., a U.S. Capitol Police officer incorrectly announced fire in the hole at the RNC when they meant to say DNC. At 2:05, the officer corrects their mistake and says, fire in the hole at the DNC. Mr. Black, what does the term fire in the hole mean?
Generally, the term fire in the hole would be indicative of an explosion is about to happen. It's a range term. When we're about to detonate a charge on an explosives range, that term fire in the hole would mean the explosion is going to occur.
In other words, look out, clear the area.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Dennis, what could this mistake lead to when dealing with multiple scenes? In other words, identifying, there's two going on, RNC, DNC, very similar names, but, and again, it was corrected at some point, but what could a mistake like that lead to? Declaring fire in the hole at the wrong location.
For me, sir?
Yes, sorry.
Obviously, information is critical. Knowing what's going on at a particular event is absolutely critical for incident command. Multiple devices, multiple locations, other problems in other areas complicate communications for any incident commander.
Sorry, I called you Mr. Dennis, my fault. Mr. Dennis, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I concur with what Mr. Black said.
Okay. At nearly the same time at the DNC, an unmarked police car drives next to the robot as it prepares to disrupt the bomb. Mr. Dennis, is it safe for a vehicle to drive within feet of a device, whether it's viable or not, after fire in the hole has been called?
That would be negative.
I'm sorry?
It wouldn't be appropriate for
It
a
would not be
vehicle to drive, no.
appropriate. Mr. Dennis, should any civilian or law enforcement officer be allowed within close proximity of the device, viable or not, once fire in the hole has been called?
No.
Okay, thank you. As you can see from the montage, there were several, both law enforcement and civilians in the area, even one, whether it's plainclothes police officer or civilian walking by and looking at the robot while it was there. It seems to be that, based on what you're telling us, that is highly inappropriate and potentially deadly. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Next, I'd like to discuss law enforcement's failure to discover the devices. On the morning of January 6th, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris arrived at the DNC through the garage entrance. Prior to her arrival, the Secret Service conducted a security sweep of the building and its exterior. Based on records obtained by the subcommittee, the Secret Service used 2 Uniform Division K-9 units and more than 10 Secret Service agents to conduct this sweep. Let me just say before we roll this tape, we're showing all of these videos during my time in the beginning to save time later, so others may have questions based off of these videos. So this is just not for this line of questioning. Let's go ahead and roll this tape of the security sweep. It is a still picture of the building on the right, just for clarity of where the device is. At 9:28 a.m., a Secret Service handler and the bomb dog conducted a sweep of the garage outside the DNC. At one point in the video, the handler allows the dog to inspect an area directly behind the device. As the handler begins to pull away, his leash tightens, causing him to lose balance. Let's just look at that portion again for clarity. It's at this point when he goes down and turns to the right. You can see his leg kick out a little bit.
Whose leg were we looking
Right there, of the actual officer. Thank you. Mr. Keim, what is your assessment of the effectiveness of
Mr. Chair, may I
Yes.
just ask a question? I think we're probably about 10 minutes into your 5 minutes.
We're about to wrap it up. We're taking the additional time so we can save time later, so we don't have to replay the videos. So it's going to take a little additional time. We'll be moving on very quickly. Mr. Keim, what's your assessment of these sweeps in the video?
It appears to me that the canine handler, the canine team, is doing an open sweep where the dog's out in front of him and he's letting the dog dictate where he wants to go. Unfortunately, the dog goes out of the screen whenever the handler has his left leg and left arm go up. And it could be one of two things. The dog had some type of change of behavior out of our view, or the handler had a change of behavior and the handler's trying to allow that dog by giving him that extra lead. And that's usually what happens is your foot goes up, your hand goes up, and you're trying to leave. You don't want to put any unneeded pressure on the dog, meaning pulling on the lead and causing the dog to move. Depending on how well trained the dog is and the handler is, to me it appears he's trying to give him a little bit more lead because he's had some type of change of behavior. Unfortunately, we can't see what that change of behavior is, and it looks like the dog decides he's going to leave that area. Could he be an odor? He could have had some kind of change of behavior, but
Which could have been an alert.
it could have been. Alert would be a final response, like a sit would be an alert on a package, but that would be a change of behavior. And the handler wanted to give him the time to make a decision. Is he going to go? From what I understand, there's a wall there. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to tell whether the dog gets an alert or how that air is moving. But the dog decided to leave it and walk away from
Okay.
it. So
Just real quickly, your assessment of the sweep of the vehicle.
the sweep of the vehicle, well, when we start training, depending on the experience of the dog, we tend to put a dog on a pattern. That was a free-flowing sweep where the dog's just out in front, and it looks like the dog has some kind of experience because it's hitting sort of the spots you need to hit, the wheel wells, the door seams, the windows. The handler actually pops the trunk, which causes the vehicle to breathe, the air inside. The dog turns away from it like it had no interest. So,
Okay.
And then it goes and finishes. Right? You start at one corner, you go all the way around, you finish at the same corner you started at. Sometimes you overlap by a little bit.
Okay, thank you. This will be the last video after we play, because this is also video being used for questions by the rest of the committee. And this is the video of the U.S. Capitol Police controlled disruption of the device. The robot arm is in the bottom left of the screen, if you watch it there. With this, one quick question. Mr. Dennis, if the device is successfully disrupted, what do you expect to see?
Once a device is disrupted, in this case, looks like a galvanized type pipe bomb in there, you would have the end cap. If that's what they targeted was the end cap, but take the end cap off, which is usually what bomb technicians will do. You'll see the end cap somewhere within the location of the shot that they placed. Potentially any of the residue or anything that's inside the actual pipe itself may have came out at that time. Anything else that's exterior that was maybe attached to the pipe could also be laying there in the immediate area.
Okay. Is there nothing unusual that you see in that?
No, nothing.
Okay, thank you. Now recognize Ms. Torres for 5 minutes.
Before the clock begins, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Given that you've taken close to 15 minutes, and between all of you, you have 25, 30 minutes in addition to the 15 minutes. There's 2 of us, we have 10 minutes. Are you going to allow for us to extend our time?
Well, as you know, under the rules, the chairman has full discretion over the management of time, and as I explained, we wanted to make sure to get the videos up front. If we would have done the videos or any other audio, it would have been taken out of the other members' time. So what I would ask, and I will be flexible, is to try to stay within a reasonable time with asking your questions, and if needed to be, then we can do an additional round of questioning as well. But we have so many people and other committees going on, we do want to be timely going forward.
Okay. Well, this information these videos that you have played are news to the minority. This information, as it has been, the common discourtesy of this subcommittee to not provide the minority with information other than the time and the meeting place. It is really unfortunate that, Chairman, I'm going to put this on you because you are the chairman of this committee, that you're refusing to be honest and upfront with the minority as to what exactly are we going to hear, or what is the purpose of the meeting, and second guessing our law enforcement officers, 3 years after the incident, seems to me like a very, very cheap shot. It's like spitting in their face after they gave up so much. So many of them had major injuries that were suffered under the violence of this angry mob that was unleashed on the U.S. Capitol. And while the first video was played, you said the time was around 1:30 when these pipe bombs were discovered and when, or at least one of them, when the perimeter was set. At 1:30, and I had to look back at my own personal records of where I was and what I was doing at 1:30 that night or that afternoon. And I can tell you that at 1:30, several buildings of the Capitol had already been forcibly entered, breached by this angry mob. So to say, to the law enforcement community, you should have been here instead of over there. You should have been over there instead of over there. We didn't have enough officers. We didn't have, the officers that were present were here with their own armed with their own bravery to defend themselves. They had barely the equipment that it takes in order for them to handle the mob that was unleashed on them by the former president. Mr. Black, thank you for your presence here. I'm going to ask you, our colleagues in the minority have repeatedly asked Director Ray and the FBI to testify publicly as to the status of the investigation into the pipe bombs and why it continues after 3 years. Is this policy, is this the policy you had to observe over the years in your career as a law enforcement professional?
As far as the investigation taking 3 years or more,
No, as far as giving public testimony as to an update of how the investigation is going.
generally, ongoing investigations aren't discussed. It can
Why
be,
is that?
it can be counterproductive not only to that investigation, but to future investigations as well.
What do you mean counterproductive?
If certain investigative techniques are being undertaken to identify a suspect, for instance, if those types of techniques are divulged, that suspect can change their behavior, destroy evidence, and then again, that information is available for future
So
crimes.
not only could it hurt the current investigation, but it could compromise any future investigation if you're having to deal with that same person, correct?
That same person or type of crime,
The same suspect?
yes.
Because they would change their MO, and it would be make it that much more difficult for you.
They could, yes.
And would take any action to cover their crime.
Correct.
As far as we know, the perpetrator could be sitting here in the room with us, correct?
Their identity is currently unknown.
It could be the perpetrator who planted these bombs could be watching us on TV, right?
Perhaps.
How could revealing this information put this U.S. Capitol in danger in the future? Specific information.
Investigative tactics and techniques are usually not publicized, as I mentioned earlier, so that the suspects, if one has been developed, wouldn't destroy evidence or change their behavior that would render those investigative techniques less viable.
Some individuals, including members of this institution, have questioned the authenticity of the pipe bombs found at the DNC and the RNC. However, FBI statements firmly state that both devices were viable and could have been detonated, resulting in serious injury or death. Based on your years of service, individuals in government make unfounded allegations that the FBI lying about a particular investigation. Does that pose any challenges to the FBI?
Public perception is important. The men and women that are doing the work every day.
Why is that? Why is that perception so important?
Law enforcement relies on information and a good relationship with the public and communities they serve. Any kind of negative publicity is to be expected sometimes, but you work through that to get to the logical conclusion and justice.
So by breaking that trust, we compromise any potential witness that could come forward and give us information.
The public should be certain that any viable information will be accepted and followed through to its logical conclusion.
Okay, thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields. Just for clarification based on the ranking member's comments. We're not here to discuss the investigation of the FBI. That totally agree with Mr. Black and what he is stating. In fact, this hearing was noticed to the minority and the public over a week ago with a description of what we would be discussing here today, which is not a partisan finger pointing, but trying to get to the bottom of what may have gone right, what may have gone wrong, and how we can improve the security of members of both parties here. And as a courtesy to the minority, the videos that we played here today were sent to the minority yesterday for review, so it shouldn't have been a surprise. I now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with the gentlelady that we didn't have enough officers that were on duty that day, and it did create a number of different issues, plus we were unprepared. As a Capitol Police, we're just unprepared for those numbers. That being said, Assistant Chief Gallagher, you said in your testimony, and I quote, it is my understanding that both of these devices were fully functional, viable pipe bombs. However, it is unclear whether they would have gone off on their own had they not been rendered safe by our bomb squad. How did you form that opinion that it's unclear they would not have gone off on their own?
Yes, sir. the viability and functionality of the bombs, of the pipe bombs that were placed at the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee. Those statements come from our trained bomb techs, highly trained, highly capable bomb techs, that when they were presented with a picture of the device on scene, they didn't have all the context of when the devices were planted, how long they had already been sitting there. They were looking at a picture of a pipe bomb to them, which comprised of all the components. They didn't know, obviously, what was inside it,
Well, what made you think it wouldn't go off?
based on the bomb tech's experience and
Okay,
training.
that's all I need to know. I appreciate that. I have great concerns, and I understand that there was a dilemma with manpower, but lots of vehicles are passing by here. The one at the DNC headquarters was found at approximately 1:05, but if I understood your testimony correct, Assistant Chief, and tell me if I've got it wrong, the buildings, the people were not told to shelter in place until 1:30. Isn't that what your testimony says? I'm looking at page 3. And both your oral and your written testimony, you said at 1:30 p.m. DNC and Fairchild Building personnel were told to shelter in place.
That is correct, at 1:30.
Okay, so here's my question. There were people, now we've already gone over that the perimeter wasn't secured, but the Vice President-elect of the United States is inside one of the buildings, and there's a 25-minute delay before anybody goes over and says, y'all might want to shelter in place. That's not acceptable, is it?
That's not accurate.
All right, tell me why it's not accurate.
Yes. When the initial call came out, our counter-surveillance agents found the pipe bomb. They immediately went up and alerted the 2 law enforcement agencies that were at the DNC, which was the U.S. Secret Service and Metropolitan Police Department. Then those counter-surveillance agents moved over to do exactly what they were trained to do, which was go establish an incident command post.
Then why does your testimony say that they were told to shelter in place at 1:30? Because in the meantime, instead of sheltering in place, the Vice President-elect of the United States leaves and driving past the pipe bomb that was viable according to evidence.
That is correct. And the time frame between when we set up our incident command post and when the shelter in place was, there was also teams, not U.S. Capitol Police, that were telling the DNC to evacuate as well. And that's why you had the evacuation of the protectee and others.
All right, so there was cross communications. Mr. Black, you said that you hoped someday we would identify this individual. But wouldn't you agree with me that in light of the fact that the perimeter was not secured, because there's 2 reasons to secure the perimeter. First and foremost, to protect the lives of people, correct?
Yes.
And second, to preserve evidence. Isn't that also correct?
Yes.
And without having secured that perimeter, we will never know if there was any incriminating evidence that might have been found in that perimeter zone, because you've got all kinds, you've got pedestrians walking past the robots, you've got numerous vehicles, including law enforcement vehicles, driving by where they're about to detonate and in the vicinity. Isn't that crime scene just a mess as far as trying to find any evidence that you can later use to link a suspect to the site?
So the device itself was intact at the time. It was placed in the evening hours of the 5th and located on the 6th, so there was a lot of activity.
Are you sure? Because here's what a good criminal defense attorney is going to say. You tell me if you don't think this sounds reasonable from a defense attorney standpoint. You saw if they identify the individual that placed what is believed to be the bomb, hours go by, and you had a search by the Secret Service at DNC, and the dog didn't light on an explosive. So clearly the device that my client might have left there wasn't the device that was later determined to be the pipe bomb, because it wasn't picked up by the bomb sniffing dog. Doesn't that sound like what's going to happen if they ever do identify the guy in the video?
It may be a good question, but I believe it's flawed in its logic.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I win that case. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Now recognize the full committee ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will admit I am now more confused than when we began just a short time ago. Mr. Chair, you had indicated you had invited the FBI to testify but I have no idea how they would have contributed to the conversation about what happened moments after the bombs were discovered. So I'm not sure I understand that. And if I understand now, the line of questioning and the videos is to suggest failures by the United States Capitol Police regarding the establishment of the perimeters, securing evidence, and some questions now about the handling of the K-9 sweep. So I'm also curious, I'll ask this rhetorically. I'm not sure what the poster behind you, Mr. Chair, is. What does Donald Trump, fraud, Hutchinson, conspiracy, stolen, Meadows? I have no idea what any of this has to do with the hearing in question, which is
Gentlemen,
about the
we
pipe
yield.
bond. Yeah.
This was just as
stop
part of
my
the
clock.
opening statement as illustrative that the Select Committee, who was tasked with investigating this 2 years ago, only mentioned the pipe bomb 5 times. They mentioned that the size and the font of these words are how many times those particular words were used in that investigation, is to show the point that no one has taken a real look at this until this committee, which has pure oversight over this. As regarding the FBI was invited because they conducted the post-incident investigation of the device itself.
Okay.
Reel back.
All right, the fact that the poster's there, I think, signifies other things, but I'll leave you to your answer. I do want to give, I mean, this has been interesting. I'm not sure, and I'm no expert. Mr. D'Esposito and others are on the panel about law enforcement, so I don't want to leave without giving you, Assistant Chief Gallagher, who I've had the privilege of knowing now the last couple of years, some opportunity to describe, first of all, clearly a number of things were going on at the same time. I mean, these pipe bomb incidents were not in isolation. So maybe you could respond both to the questions, I don't know if they're allegations, but certainly suggestions that both sites were mishandled, number one, and talk about what was going on in the context of the things that were happening that day, if you could.
Sure, thank you. So as far as a allegation of failures by the U.S. Capitol Police officers, I want to be upfront and honest. The U.S. Capitol Police haven't shied away from the failures of that day, and those failures result in the leadership of Capitol Police, not with the police officers that were outnumbered. We suffered 80 officers who had injuries. We lost 2 of our heroes, one on the day after January 6th and one on January 9th. So we have well over 2,000 pages of after-action reviews resulting in all the, from the OIG reports, the GAO, General Honore study, that go into detail in every aspect of the department of what needs to be improved. All aspects of the department needed improvement. For context of that day, while we're dealing with the DNC, which I want to preface is off Capitol ground. So the primary jurisdiction for the DNC is Metropolitan Police Department. When our bomb techs showed up at the scene for the DNC, Metropolitan Police Department had an EOD technician there who asked our bomb techs to take the lead on the scene because our bomb techs show up with our equipment. So we had our robot. MPD did not have their robot. It would have taken a lot more time to get the resources there. The perimeter that was set up around the DNC, it looked chaotic because it was chaotic. We were dealing with a pipe bomb a couple blocks away at the RNC. We were dealing with a pickup truck that had 11 Molotov cocktails, machetes, rifles, handguns, ammunition in it. And at the same time, our officers were suffering the injuries on the west front of the Capitol and the east front of the Capitol. We had multiple calls for 1033 go out, which is an officer in trouble. So as you can, for context, I would gladly give up a perimeter not being perfect to be able to get officers responding to help their brothers and sisters who were calling for help at the U.S. Capitol. It was a chaotic day. It was mentioned that we didn't have enough Capitol Police officers. We did not. We did not have any mutual aid that was on site already. So, and even for a 10-100, which is what we call a suspicious package, and I'm certain my colleagues seated to the left of me would agree, all of them have some issues with the initial perimeter, with getting resources there, with getting agencies there. Now, when you're looking at the DNC where you have multiple jurisdictions, Capitol Police are already stretched beyond their limits. We're fighting on the west front, the east front, officers getting injured. We have 1033 calls. We didn't have enough people to get down there immediately to set up this perfect perimeter where not one car, not one pedestrian could enter into that perimeter. The officers did the best that they could. We just did not have enough resources there.
Thank you. And this, of course, not to mention that for 3 hours, the occupant of the White House at the time failed to call out the National Guard, which could have clearly aided in support of the personnel at the Capitol. And I only raise that because the name behind it on the poster. I did want to ask a quick question in my remaining seconds of Mr. Keim. The question from the gentleman earlier was about the failure of the K-9 unit to discover the bomb. Are the dogs infallible? Do they ever miss something? I mean, is it likely that they would have missed, or is there something, would you necessarily conclude that the bomb wasn't there during the sweep, as the gentleman did, and that it was placed somehow afterward?
No, dogs are dogs. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're having a bad day. There's several reasons a dog could miss an explosive.
So is it, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but is it possible then, in your judgment, that the dog simply missed it, that it could have been there during the time of the sweep and the dog just didn't pick it up? Is that possible?
Yeah, anything's possible. We don't have a video of the actual sweep around the explosive device. I would say as a team, you know, you follow a pattern when you're doing a sweep. Once you've completed your sweep, you know, it's done, it's no longer secure. From what I've seen from the stills of the pipe bomb, if I'm doing a sweep with my canine and I come across a park bench with that sitting underneath it, I'm not putting my dog on it, right? I might not even try to get him into the cone, which is, you know, the odor, depending on which way the wind's blowing. Because once I see that, that becomes a very suspicious package. And if you really want to upset an EOD unit, go ahead and tell them you cleared that using your canine, right? That's just not again. You're literally stepping away from that as far as you can, securing the perimeter, making that perimeter incredibly large, and let EOD decide how much they're going to shrink it from that point on.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm sure there's a reason for it, why there's a still on the right-hand side of the sweep, but the dog, I mean, it's like a split screen. I don't know what happened to the video on the other side, but I guess.
Yeah, there's many reasons the dog might have had to go to the bathroom. It could be a ton of different reasons, or the dog's been already been searching for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, and now he's getting exhausted. Even if the weather's not hot, they only have a certain amount of time that they can actually be successful.
Gotcha. So necessarily reaching the conclusion that the dog, it wasn't that the device wasn't there and the dog would have caught it, that's not necessarily a
No,
conclusion you would really.
it could also depend on the actual maker of the device and how well he concealed whatever the explosive was inside the pipe.
Very good. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the still on the right was just for reference as to where the device was, since the edge of the camera didn't cover that. So we had a still that would match up just so you could see where the device was in relationship to the dog. Another point of clarification, that sweep was done by the U.S. Secret Service. It wasn't the U.S. Capitol Police. And just for third point of clarification, I think it may be just hard to understand that maybe we're not used to actually having a nonpartisan, unbiased hearing actually try to get to the bottom, that we're not finger pointing. We're just trying to figure out what happened, what went wrong, what went right, and how we can make sure it doesn't happen again. So with that, I recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just reiterate your point. This isn't here to point fingers. This is a learning exercise, and this is our job to provide a supervisory role and to review information and to help us all prevent the miscues that happened during this event. You know, there was a lot going on, to your point, but also lives were at risk here, and there were some very, very important cues missed. And the basic line is, how do we prevent that from happening in the future? Not pointing a finger at anybody. So we do the same thing in the operating room. If you screw up, there's a redo, see where it then went wrong to try to prevent a problem again. So thank you all for coming. Mr. Gallagher, I just want to continue a little bit line of questioning. Who is responsible for the command and control of the DNC pipe scene?
The U.S. Capitol Police had the incident command, and our bomb squad was the lead bomb squad for the DNC scene.
Okay. And that bomb squad that dog would be a bomb sniffing dog?
The dog that was at the scene was a U.S. Secret Service canine.
And what does that mean?
It is one of their bomb sniffing dogs.
Okay,
yes.
all There were over 30 vehicles and a pedestrian allowed to enter the active crime scene, and I thought that's been gone before. I'm not a, police officer or anything, but I would assume that would be anathema to what a crime scene should have. Is that fair?
That's fair.
What types of additional training or equipment would be beneficial moving in the future? Because again, we're trying to learn from this episode. What would happen in the future to prevent such a problem with command and control problems that we would have in the future?
So in the future, for events like this, and we have this in place now, any large-scale events on Capitol grounds, we have funding to bring in mutual aid so that we're not understaffed, so that we have the contingency plans in place to be able to handle multiple incidents, multiple areas of Capitol grounds with mutual aid on site. Thank you. With mutual aid on site. In addition to that, we have implemented training post-January 6th for a whole host of reasons with Incident Command, which deals with Area Command, Incident Command, scene perimeters for all sworn employees of the U.S. Capitol Police.
Okay, thank you. All right, at 1:09 p.m., the operator of the USP camera facing, I really want to get into this camera issue, facing the DNC garage began to zoom in on the position of that pipe bomb. Approximately 1:40 p.m., the same camera was turned away and faced south on South Capitol Street, and a second camera on the west side of the DNC was also turned away at 2:20 p.m. Both times, neither of the cameras were turned back. Do you have any idea why the cameras were moved? Who did it?
So that would be speculation on my part as to who was working the cameras there. We have trained command center specialists who are the ones that operate our USCP cameras. The cameras with...
Would there not be a time log of who would be working those at this specific time?
There would. I don't have that with me.
Okay.
With regards to our cameras at the DNC, I'm aware of the speculation of moving some of the cameras. There were 3 cameras that capture various aspects of the DNC. The 2 that you mentioned, one does move. I don't have the camera number off the top of my head, but
Sure.
One does move away from the DNC, and it goes up by the U.S. Capitol Power Plant where the Incident Command Post was. So when you start to see it zoom in, it's zooming in on our U.S. Capitol Police Command Post location, which is typical for a command center operator to zoom in on the command post. The second camera that you mentioned that moves, that starts to move, it captures certain areas of the DNC, and then it looks like it starts to move to check on street closures and various other aspects of the response. There is one camera that captures the entirety of the scene at the DNC. That captures where the pipe bomb was located, the evacuation of the protectee that was there, the K-9, our counter surveillance agent that finds the pipe bomb, and continues unmoved and catches the robot coming down as well as the disruption. So we do have, a camera that takes the whole complexity of that scene. I think it's important to note too, we have 1,800 cameras on the Capitol complex. On that day, we probably had
But these are manually moved, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so somebody had to move it away from that, correct?
Yes, sir. As to why, speculation as to why those cameras would not have been moved back, because we probably had 2 or 3 camera operators in our command center, and they're also dealing with the scene at the RNC and all of the breaches at the U.S. Capitol as well.
Absolutely understand. I absolutely understand. I think, to the chairman's point, we're just trying to gather some information here. This is not a partisan issue. This is protection of the executive branch. It's protection of the legislative branch, everybody else. So with that, Mr. Chairman, actually, just real quick question, Mr. Black, was that those were both functional pipe bombs, correct?
Yes.
Both functional. Okay, thank you. You're back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. D'Esposito, Law Enforcement Officer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to move through this quick because I do have a lot of questions and I want to get to a point. Chief Gallagher, during the course of the events on January 6, 2021, Capitol Police radio dispatchers were clearly overwhelmed, which they should have been, with the amount of information being transmitted, the number of events occurring at the same time, ensuring transmissions were on appropriate channels, and providing accurate info. Dispatch, for example, provided inaccurate information regarding the evacuation routes of civilians from the DNC, wrong address for incident command post locations, wrong callback numbers, and in many cases, the dispatchers expressed audible panic and confusion. I've been on the other side of that radio. I've been on the other side of the radio when the stuff is hitting the fan, and you need people on the other side of that radio that are able to calm everyone down and get them the correct information. Can you briefly describe the responsibilities of dispatchers for the Capitol Police?
Sure. So our dispatchers are responsible for basically the lifeline for the officers out in the field. Anything that they need, they go through the radio. The dispatchers are trained. They're highly competent dispatchers that are set up to handle multiple incidents. They got overwhelmed that day, just like the officers got overwhelmed as well.
Absolutely. And this is sort of not on the same topic, but just from my knowledge, are civilian members of the Capitol Police part of the FOP?
No, they are not.
Okay. Their training, the dispatcher training, do you believe that they receive adequate training?
I do believe they receive adequate training.
And
yes.
continuous training?
Yes.
Okay. Moving to something different. At approximately 13:13 hours, a United States Capitol Police officer asked dispatch to identify an incident commander for the DNC pipe bomb. After it took multiple attempts to secure an incident commander, dispatch finally identified an established incident commander and then proceeded to provide an incorrect location for that incident commander. A second officer answered over the radio and attempted to correct the mistake by providing 2 additional locations which were also incorrect. This led dispatch to erroneously call out another incorrect location for the DNC pipe bomb. I know the answers to these questions, and I'm just trying to get to a point. Is this kind of confusion common?
This kind of confusion is not common with a regular incident. These type of incidents where you had explosive devices, multiple explosive devices, breaches at the west front, east front, it is a chaotic scene, as you
Right, and in a perfect world, which was one that we never operate in, obviously what we would want to happen is all the information be crystal clear and precise and what we need. Did the failure to establish an incident command lead to subsequent breaches of the perimeter?
I would say the lack of resources and officers between not only U.S. Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police, it was their primary jurisdiction as well, to be able to secure that perimeter is what caused people and vehicles to traverse it.
Okay. So lastly, I just want to comment on Ms. Torres's remarks in the beginning, that we're here to point the finger. We serve a purpose here in House administration, and that is to provide oversight to the Capitol Police. And it is also our job to provide the resources, the training, and everything necessary so that you can do the job that you're supposed to do. And you made a comment, Chief, and your quote, that you and the department has, or specifically you, not shied away from the failures of that day. If that doesn't mark the remarks of a true leader, I'm not sure what does, and I would serve under your command any day. And I think it is our job to make sure that those failures, and that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to point fingers. We're not here to talk about defunding the police. We're not here to, as Ms. Torres say, Monday morning quarterback. There is no time to Monday morning quarterback any incidents that police officers have, and until they wear the gun belt, until they pin that shield on their chest, they have no idea what law enforcement officers do every day. But it is our job, as part of this committee, again, to provide you everything that you need. And when we have incidents like this, or any other incidents, if we're not going to take the time to critique it, if we're not going to take the time to see what happened, what went well, and what failed, well then, we're not doing our job, and neither are you, right? The purpose of this is to find ways that we can improve. If protocols failed, we need to change them. If training failed, we need to do it better. If there's opportunities for more resources, if we need to work better with other law enforcement agencies so that we can keep people safe, well, then we need to foster those relationships. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman, and I think that was a good way to wrap up this hearing here today. I appreciate everyone being here. We have Chief Manger here with us today, as well as other members of the leadership. The chairman of the Capitol Police Union, Gus Papa. I am not even going to try to pronounce the last name, but I think everybody knows who he is. I appreciate all the witnesses being here. I would like to just offer one piece of clarification to make sure I understand this right, and I think it was Mr. Keim. We were talking about the U.S. Secret Service and the dogs. I want to make sure you understand what your response was, that it's not the dog's responsibility to identify the device, but the handler. So the fact that the device was seen and close by, would it not be the actual handler who should have noticed it, not just relying on the dog?
Yes, when you have a canine team, it's a team for a reason. You got the dog and the handler. The handler's looking for areas, anything to put the dog on, to use the advantage of the dog, right? Dogs have a 40% stronger sense of smell than we do. So the dog's purpose is to find that we can't see. The handler's position is to locate the areas to put, as you're doing a pattern search and you see that, you wouldn't even put your dog on that, on an explosive pipe or any suspicious package. You would back off.
Okay, thank you. I just felt that was important for clarification, as we're not trying to point fingers at the dog for not doing his job, but to get a better understanding of how this works. I commend the Capitol Police for all that they went through and stood the line that day. It was a very bad day, and we want to continue to do our oversight, as Mr. D'Esposito said, not to point fingers, but to make sure that we do correct what was done wrongly. We do depoliticize the Capitol Police, make you able to do your job according the way you need to without the politicization aspect of it, and make sure that you have the training and the resources you need to do a very difficult job. Again, thank you all for being here. Members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for you, and I can pretty much assure you that we do. And we ask that you please respond to these in writing. We will submit these questions to you if you will respond in writing. Without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or revise and extend their remarks. If there is no further business, I thank the members for their participation, and without objection, this subcommittee stands adjourned.
I think Mary Beth wants to have a small press gathering for you.
Thank you.
Oh,
I don't know if Gus told you, I'm retired captain of police, I'm trying to help.
excellent.
Yeah.